Hello there, and welcome into another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you for clicking on the show. I'm your host, Don Kleppen. And if it's your first time here, welcome. Thanks for coming. This is a show where we're taking a journalistic look at all things cannabis. I try to talk to people who are in the space, business owners, researchers, policy makers, or leaders in the space, people who are answering the questions about this plant that humans have been using for thousands of years. If you would like to engage with the show at all, at C-Man Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and the website's cannabismanpodcast.com on YouTube and Facebook as well. Engage in any way you like, and you can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like the show, if you find you like what I'm doing here, go ahead and scroll down to the description notes and click on that support the show link. It'll take you to a Buzzsprout page, and you can become a subscriber and give something to the show. You can get a shout out, your name read in one of these episodes, and a congratulatory email from me. All support is much appreciated, as is listening to the show. I really appreciate you jumping on here right now, just talking about cannabis with me. I am discussing cannabis this week as well with one such expert. He's an excellent insider in Washington, D.C. He's lived and worked there for a long, long time and has a lot of connections in government as well as the cannabis space. David Culver is back with us. He is with the U.S. Cannabis Council and Legalize America. And so David and I, during our interview, we talk about a lot of different things. Safer banking, as it's now known, the bill that passed the Senate earlier this session, just not that long ago, about a month or so, and was on track to move forward. But now that the U.S. House of Representatives has been without a speaker for over 2 weeks, an historic gap of time without that position having been filled, it has brought all of government to a standstill until that's addressed. There is a hearing today to see whether or not an Ohio Republican, Jim Jordan, has the votes in order to fill this seat. And David, after our interview, we decided to listen in on the feed from the House floor as this vote tally is being taken. So David and I are going to talk for a while, and then you're going to hear that vote. And this isn't something that I typically do on the show, but this is definitely an historic moment. It's newsworthy, and I thought it might be an opportunity if you might not be familiar with how things go on the Senate floor or the House floor. You can actually listen to one of these procedures taking place and kind of, just it is dry. It is a vote being taken, but there are nuances that David kind of goes through in terms of why certain votes matter, which names to look out for, and some context behind whether or not they changed, why they might have changed their votes, and then looking ahead, whether or not Jim Jordan wins, which we now know he did not win enough votes, but you can kind of hear why that matters and what is likely waiting ahead, whether or not Jordan is going to press for a third vote for him, or maybe an expansion of powers for Mr. McHenry, who is the pro temp speaker. So anyway, that's what I have in store for you on this episode. I hope you enjoy it. I thought it might be an interesting exercise, and again, kind of look into what's going on in D.C. at this really crazy moment for that, and having an insider, somebody who is so experienced along for the ride, and David, I thought might be worth it for all of us to check it out. So I hope you enjoy it as well, and next week I'll certainly be back with another interview and another discussion about cannabis events, talking to you about what strain I'm smoking on, as well as some news and cannabis things that you can look forward to in the communities around you, and all that good jazz that we normally get into on the Cannabis Man podcast.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis Broadcast.
Listener, welcome back. I've got a special treat for you today. It's a favorite guest that I'm very, very happy to have back. Extremely informative. He is the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs with the U.S. Cannabis Council and with the new Super PAC, the Political Action Committee, Legalize America. He is David Culver, and he's here to talk about what is going on in the House, the U.S. House of Representatives, and the speaker vote that they're having, as well as how the lack of speaker and their pursuit of one right now is impacting the timeline for safe banking, which, as we know, passed the Senate a little earlier, and looking forward to things like further steps like rescheduling cannabis and where that priority lies with all the other items on the agenda of Congress. So, listener, please join me in welcoming David Culver back to the show. Welcome, David.
Thanks so much, Don. Great to be with you. Great to be back again. And thanks for your work. And I love the show and glad to be back again.
Thanks so much, man. Yeah, really appreciate it. Got a lot of positive feedback from the information you gave on your last interview. And people love to hear, I think, this close up on the ground take of what's going on in DC, especially where, cannabis is concerned, because, state by state, as we know, it's been very strange with having each state do its own thing in terms of cannabis policy. We know that certain things are never going to get better until the federal government can make some real policy changes here so that it's not such a hodgepodge thing. And you really are able to give us a great look at what's going on there. And what's going on this morning is we are approaching a second vote for a new Speaker of the House, at least in terms of whether or not Jim Jordan is going to be that Speaker. So can we, we're recording this on the morning of October 18th, Wednesday, and on Tuesday, Jim Jordan lost an attempt to take that Speaker role. Can you tell us just briefly a little about what happened yesterday, David?
Yeah, for sure. So I think listeners might remember that there was a caucus vote that Jim Jordan won. Originally, after Speaker McCarthy was ousted, there was a vote for Steve Scalise from Louisiana.
Right.
And he won the vote inside the caucus, but he actually did not decide to take his candidacy to the floor because he knew, based on his whip operation, that he didn't have enough votes to succeed. So he dropped out of the race. And then they went back to the caucus. The caucus voted again. Jim Jordan was the favorite, and he received the majority of the votes, but there were a number of members, dozens actually, that voted against him inside the caucus. So the big question then was, what does the vote look like on the floor? And Representative Jordan decided to move to the floor yesterday, and they had the vote in the afternoon. He did not get enough votes, and in fact, he had 20 members vote against his candidacy, which that was about where I thought things were on Monday. On Tuesday morning, the media was reporting that that number had actually shrunk significantly based on a lot of work that he and his allies had been doing.
Right.
But it actually ended up kind of where we all thought it was going to be. And they really didn't pick up anybody new, except, there were a few exceptions to that comment. And so the question for today really is, when they're going to be gaveling in here in about 10 minutes, they'll have a number of procedural items that they go through before they get to the vote itself. But the big question on everybody's mind is, does his vote count get better or does his vote count get worse? And we can dig into this a little bit more, but he's pledged as of yesterday to continue to keep going.
Right.
And you'll remember that Speaker McCarthy took him 15 votes in order to get the gavel. And really, how long is Mr. Jordan going to decide to stay into this?
Right.
And I think today's vote will really determine a lot of that. If he loses additional votes, then I think he's going to have a real serious conversation with his team about whether he stays in and continues to push. But if he gains, I think you can expect additional votes to occur if today's vote is not successful.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense, and thank you for laying it out that way. I would say he seems, and I don't know very much about Jim Jordan, but I do know that he seems committed to not wearing a suit jacket. So based on the commitment to that, it seems like he's a committed guy. So I expect that he would push for a few more rounds of votes, I guess.
He absolutely doesn't wear his jacket, but the politics that are swirling around today are really interesting around this vote. And the media's reported last night and this morning that there are a number of small groups within the Republican caucus that have put together wish lists. In fact, there was reporting this morning about a Long Island group of legislators that had 3 items that they wanted Speaker Jordan to agree to, or Speaker Jordan, he's not there yet, but Mr. Jordan to agree to in advance of their yes vote. So we'll see if there are additional, conversations like that and additional deals that are cut. But there's also comments that are coming out of those that have opposed his candidacy, and they remain committed. It's a lot of appropriators that are concerned about his view as it relates to the federal budget, and I don't really see any of them backing down. So my prediction is that once they gavel in and get to this vote, that we'll probably end up seeing more than 20 this time around versus less. And then it's a big question of what's next.
Right, exactly, and that is the question, because once whatever does happen with this vote, if Jordan loses again, then it's sort of like, all right, and let's say then that the votes fall where, like you just said, that he lost more, so that it's clear that he doesn't have it. Then what is the likely next step? There's the Speaker pro tempore, I believe is the title, McHenry, if I'm not mistaken, who has the gavel currently. I've been reading that there are some moves to expand, give him some expanded powers in this sort of interim role. Do you think that that's a likely next step if Jordan doesn't get the votes?
I really do. I think that the nation has a number of urgent issues that the House needs to act on. They need to get back to the people's business, and of course, top of the list is the situation in Israel. They're our strongest ally in the region. The president is there now, as I'm sure your listeners know. And if those of you that are listening have not listened to the president's speech, I strongly encourage you to do so. But America's watching what's going on there, and we're standing with Israel. So the House needs to get this figured out, and they need to act. And one of the easiest ways to do this is to expand the temporary Speaker McHenry's role. This is uncharted territory, but I do think it's something that is very real and something that each faction within the Republican caucus could agree to. I actually said yesterday to a group of my U.S. Cannabis Council members that that's actually where my money is going, is that's the next step. And then they continue to work on trying to find a consensus candidate, or potentially going back to McCarthy. I mean, let's not forget that 96% of his caucus voted for him, and yet he was still ousted. So I still think that McCarthy is still on the table, but I do feel pretty confident telling the listeners that I think this expanded role for McHenry is very real, especially given that I feel like the vote today is actually the vote count's going to slip against Mr. Jordan.
Such an interesting point, David, the notion that McCarthy is also still an option, especially given, you were just mentioning how there's these different factions that seem to be, having a wish list. If they would support somebody like Jordan, we know that happened with McCarthy, and that was something that kind of came up again in his ultimate ouster, was that there were some who were pushing back against the fact that he made compromises to some specific groups in order to get their initial support. And it's just fascinating to me that, sort of that there are more, that behavior's continuing with this current, looking for a new speaker. It just sort of makes me wonder, like, where does that end? I mean, how could you continue to try and drum up support if you're taking down orders of favors or future to-do list, items for so many different more groups every single time.
Well, it just makes the job impossible based on the concessions that you have to provide in order to get it. We saw that, very, very clearly with Speaker McCarthy. But this is not just a Speaker McCarthy issue. It goes back one speaker after the other. This has been going on for quite some time. The job is nearly an impossible one as a result of it. But I think the most important comments I think I can make right at this moment is that there is urgent business that the House of Representatives needs to attend to, whether it's keeping the government open or addressing our key ally, that is Israel. They need to get back to the people's business, and they need to do it now. And the clearest and easiest way for them to do that is obviously to expand Mr. McHenry's authority to tackle some of these issues. The second point is that the appetite for a very lengthy floor, day after day, week after week, debate and vote for a speaker is really gone. I just don't think members want to see it anymore. I think they're fed up with this. You're seeing more and more members publicly lash out just about the fact that they can't get themselves in order. And this is really bad politics for the Republicans. If I'm the Democrats, I'm going to sit there and keep my caucus in line, which Hakeem Jeffries has done, and I'm going to let them sit in this mess that they are currently in, because politically it's very, very bad for Republicans. And I think, if you're the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which is the campaign arm for the House Democrats, you're kind of salivating over this. And the longer this plays out, the better it's going to be for Democratic candidates in 2024.
I completely agree. I'm glad you said that, because I think that it's, as you said, that the appetite among House members is gone, and I feel that the American people feel the exact same way. I mean, there is urgent business. You certainly mentioned the situation in Israel. I think listeners may know there was a hospital attack yesterday. It continues to escalate. It's been an untenable situation, and as much as we've aided Ukraine in its war with Russia, in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas here, this is an even more dire situation, because there are more allies, there are more countries that are all kind of tied up into this. And as David said, Israel is our greatest ally in that area. It's something that needs to be done. But how does this, looking at cannabis, this speaker, vote and the other agenda, the other items on the agenda, how does this impact safe banking? What does that timeline look like now?
Yeah, good question. So let's actually shelve the House of Representatives and this speaker debate for a moment. And I know that that's what everybody is focused on, and certainly the media is sucking all of the oxygen out of the room. But let's talk about the Senate first.
Right.
Because I think that the intention of Leader Schumer, now that this the SAFER, it's got an R in the end of it now. It's no longer safe. It's SAFER.
SAFER banking. Gotcha.
SAFER banking.
Okay.
Post markup. Yep. And maybe if the House passes it, it'll become the Safest Banking Act. I'm not quite sure.
Let's hope. But, right. Let's go for the safest.
Safest. Maybe they change that acronym again. But after the bill was passed out of full committee, after the markup, Leader Schumer has said repeatedly that his intention is to bring it to the floor in a timely manner. And the work period, last week they were in recess, but they are in the fall work period now, which goes all the way to November 17. And I think that we have, I think the leader still intends to bring it to the floor for a full vote at some point during this work period. And just to be a little bit more specific, because the government funding deadline is November 17, I think if you back up one full week and assume that the Senate is focused on that funding question that week, but then the week prior and the week prior to that, I think those are both windows of opportunity for us to see this bill go to the floor. And then the question is, what does it look like exactly? And we can get into that discussion as you would like. But if the bill does get out of the Senate, and I believe that there are the votes for that right now, it would obviously go to the House, and we have to tackle the Speaker when he or she is in place, depending on who that might be and what their policy position has been on cannabis. But in the meantime, we have an enormous amount of spade work that is left to be done in order to continue to build the number of co-sponsors on that bill. So we don't have as many co-sponsors as we did during the last Congress. And we've done a great job with many of my colleagues in the government relations space to build co-sponsors, and we're going to continue to do that. In fact, the U.S. Cannabis Council has our big fly-in next week. We'll be all over Capitol Hill middle of next week advocating for this piece of legislation. But we need to get that co-sponsor number up higher, and then we will tackle the committee. And we will also tackle leadership when he or she is in place. And I think it's also important to note, and this is very much in the weeds, but I will explain this as simply as I can. The Safer Banking Act went through a process in the Senate that they refer to as regular order, which means that it was introduced, they had a committee hearing, it had a markup, and then the bill is now sitting and waiting for floor time. That's regular order. Because they did that, that opens up additional possibilities for the bill to be attached to pieces of legislation that are going to move later this year. And in addition to it being offered as a standalone. So one scenario is that it passes out of the Senate as a standalone, and then they address it, the House and the Senate address it together as a part of some of these end-of-year packages. So potentially a big spending package, so the omnibus, we call it,
right,
that we would use to fund the government at the end of the year. Could we tack it onto that, and could we get approval by the two leaders in the Senate and the two leaders in the House? So, big question mark there, but there is the possibility in my mind that this does not need to move through regular order in the House, and that it could get attached to a moving vehicle later this year.
Wow, that's great. And listener, you'll remember that David predicted that safe banking would pass the Senate in that form that it did before the shutdown talk, and then the speaker ouster kind of took all the oxygen out of the room, as he mentioned. But so that's very exciting to hear, and knowing that November 17th, just a little less than a month away from right now, is the end of that fall session, and that we could have a passage of this at that point, which is extremely exciting. And the fact that everything does seem to get added to these omnibus, bills, you mentioned that term, and it's like, it's omnibus, it just sort of brings to mind like this Frankenstein gigantic, lumbering creature of a bill, because, it's a spending package that has to be passed. And so all kinds of legislative pieces get added to it, special interest stuff, I suppose. And it does make sense to me that then safer banking might be one of those that makes it into the omnibus. I think that would, it seems like everything else gets added to it, so why not this as well? I think that that makes a lot of sense to me. It looks like they're still kind of standing around the door on the floor of the House here. They could, looks like there's people gathered outside. I'm expecting that they're going to open these doors any time here. But David, let's talk a little about McHenry's thoughts on cannabis, if you, at least in terms of what he's indicated in the past so far. Is he someone that seems like he would do anything to thwart the passage of a safer banking, or get involved in this, kind of like redirecting it in any way or delaying it? Well, let's talk about McHenry. Let's also talk briefly about Jim Jordan, because as we sit here waiting for this vote to happen, there is the possibility that things take a turn in his direction. Of course.
And he does end up being speaker. But if you look at the voting record on cannabis, both for Mr. McHenry and for Mr. Jordan, it's not good. And I think that they do not have cannabis reform issues on their list of priorities. Neither one of them. So I don't want to sugarcoat the chairman of the Financial Services Committee's position, nor the potential new speaker of the House. On the more positive side, Mr. McHenry has said to industry lobbyists like myself repeatedly that he understands that there's a number of members on his committee that are willing, or that are pressing for the Safe Banking Act to move through the committee process. And they would very much like to see the committee address it. And I think he would be willing to give the committee that opportunity to do so. I think with Mr. Jordan, there is, again, he has a long record of opposing cannabis reform measures, but Ohio has a robust medical program, the state where he's from. They also have the possibility of going to full adult use, and the polling I've seen has suggested that they will actually vote in favor of adult use. So this issue of money at these dispensaries, cash at these dispensaries, is going to lead to problems like other states have seen, robberies and deaths. And I hope these don't happen in the state of Ohio, but I think they will because every other state has seen them. So this is a public safety issue. And we know that Mr. Jordan in particular has a long history of supporting law and order and public safety. So that's how I speak about this issue when I'm talking about it to Republicans. And this is, we can avoid the crime and potential death that comes with having an all-cash business like cannabis. And this is just giving folks the ability to put their money into a regular depository institution like you and I do.
Yeah.
So I think there's a play there with both of these more conservative members to get this done. I also think that while this may not be a priority, it's definitely not a priority for the Republican caucus. This has passed the House of Representatives 7 times with an overwhelming number of Republicans, and we have some of the best champions out there that are advocating in the House on the Republican side for the Safe Banking Act. And I'm going to do my job building the list of co-sponsors, and I'm going to let them do their job to try to shepherd the bill through.
Right on.
The House will come to order. The prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kibben.
Well, as you can hear, David, they just gavelled in the session. The House is now in session. The chaplain is going through the opening prayer right now for the session. So we're going to hear a little bit of this vote count. Is that right? The speaker, is that the first issue that'll be brought to the floor?
So most likely what they'll do is the chaplain will give her open, which she's doing right now, and then they will do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then they will most likely do a quorum call. So this is an opportunity for members to register that they are present, so that leadership knows who's in the chamber, and then I believe that they will pivot and go right to the second vote for Mr. Jordan. So, it could be a little bit longer before we see that vote begin.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And got to get the pledge in, got to count who's actually there present. I totally understand that. It sounds like we may be able to talk briefly about something else while they're kind of going through those steps, and I'll watch this screen, and obviously when they do kind of bring that, when they do bring it up, I will fade the audio a little bit higher so we can listen in on that. In the meantime, you had mentioned Schumer, who is planning to bring safer banking to the floor of the Senate. I had read the other day that Senator Chuck Grassley sent a letter to Schumer recently, I think last month, expressing concern about the Senate's, and this is a quote, ongoing prioritizing of legislation relaxing marijuana laws over other GOP senator favors and stuff that relate to prohibiting fentanyl. That was just an example that was given by Grassley. Can we talk a little about where the opposition is, separate from the Speaker of the House, separate from all of this going on, just in terms of Senate support from someone like Grassley?
Sure. Well, Senator Grassley is definitely not a cannabis reform advocate in the U.S. Senate.
Right.
So, that's very clear based on his many decades in the chamber. And he's not going to change his position in any way, shape, or form to be supportive of the reform measures that I advocate for day in and day out. The fentanyl issue that he raises is a very interesting one. So for any of your listeners that paid attention to the Senate Banking Committee markup, there was a rather heated exchange, as heated as the U.S. Senate exchanges can be, between Senator Haggerty from Tennessee, and then there was a comment from Senator Sinema, a very positive one actually, to kind of conclude the matter. But he brought up fentanyl, and he brought up the need for the Senate to act. It's an enormous issue that every member is hearing about day in and day out from their constituents. It's something that I think that Congress should act on. And after the amendment that Senator Haggerty proposed was rejected, Senator Sinema said, "I also believe this is an important issue. It's a crisis in my state, and I'd like to work with you on this." So I haven't seen anything materialize yet, but I don't think it's a bad thing if there were to be a fentanyl measure that was considered as a part of state banking. We have a pretty delicate balance that is the banking bill as negotiated, and we don't want to upset the apple cart there, but I don't see why members would be opposed to a fentanyl provision if it's reasonable for both sides. And again, I haven't seen any language to be added to this. In fact, I think it might actually add some Republican support at the end of the day.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, fentanyl is obviously a major issue. I mean, opioid overdoses over the last, 5 to 7 years have just gone, blown the roof right off in the country. And it doesn't seem like there's any time to waste. There's every single day, people are getting this. It's in everything now. And it's just, it is across the country, state by state. And I think that there's a relationship there, with cannabis. I've spoken with people on the show interviewing doctors in terms of pain medication, and they have said that cannabis is the only viable alternative to opiates for joint pain and for chronic pain. And so there's a lot of people medically who are using opiate products. And then there are people who are turning to non-pharmaceutical grade products, let's say, who maybe don't have access to the healthcare, who may not have access to legal cannabis. And that is where fentanyl is entering this equation. So I think there is a natural tie-in with a cannabis bill and something that would address the fentanyl situation. So I think that's a great point. And I want to mention they are in the middle of the roll call with the House right now. There's still a little under 12 minutes remaining for them. They got 180 have now voted present, and there's still 253 who haven't yet called their votes. So we're just still kind of keeping an eye on this as they finish this roll call here. Moving on from safe banking there and Grassley anyway, you had mentioned next week what the U.S. Cannabis Council will be doing in terms of talking with members of Congress, putting this issue top of mind again. What's Legalize America working on right now and in the near future?
Well, I'm very excited about Legalize America. We were able to talk about this last time I was on the show, and this was an initiative that we launched through U.S. Cannabis Council. It is a super PAC, the first of its kind, and there are two things that we are focused on, and we're still in the preliminary stages on both items. These just take time to build and to get these up and running, but I think we will be prepared for the election season in 2024. But we have done a test case as a Roundup campaign in 3 dispensaries in 1 state. And the results after the first month have been really, really positive. So I'm excited to take that model and to move it into a much broader nationwide campaign where cannabis consumers are able to round up their spare change from their purchase, and we're able to use it for the electioneering efforts that we've got at USCC. We also have a very significant online fundraising platform that these things, just to simplify it, it takes a long time to get them warmed up. But we have warmed this up over the last couple months, and we are beginning our fundraising online as well. So we're trying to make sure that the cannabis consumer and those that are in favor of cannabis reform across the country understand all of the things that are happening here in Washington and in the states, and really give them an opportunity to throw in a little bit of money to help us with our political efforts. And, the cannabis industry has never had a really significant chunk of political funding that they could use, both for electioneering and also for just direct advocacy here in Washington. We've had a lot of companies that have invested in government relations in Washington, but we believe that Legalize America and the Roundup campaign, they're separate, but we believe they're going to generate a significant amount of funds for us to have a much louder voice for cannabis reform.
I love it. I know you did bring this up last time, and I'm glad you did. And we can talk about it every single time, because I think that it is, as you say, it is such a major component of political action, for lack of a better term, but just sort of moving the reality of the not just legalization of a substance, but the normalization, lobbying and a grassroots effort with funding in Washington is the way that priorities of any groups with certain interests or looking at like legislative agendas, that's the way that they get things done. People, engaging with the show and just online, like my whole life, there's questions that people have in terms of, all right, like if you're not into fossil fuels, why are we still so beholden to them? Why does the Pentagon budget go up every year? Why do the pharmaceutical industries, why are they so, baked in to U.S. healthcare? All of these questions have the same answer, which is to say that there are companies and there's a lot of money tied into those groups, and they have relationships with lawmakers. It's not, you can debate whether that's good or bad, but it is the reality of how things are done. And cannabis has been sorely lacking such representation and funding and those relationships with lawmakers, since the prohibition, since it's been, totally dragged through the mud with the propaganda of last century and such. So I think that what you're doing at Legalize America, I think the Roundup campaign is great, because I know that there's plenty of cannabis enthusiasts who would be happy to add a little bit, round up their purchase of whatever they're buying, flour, gummies, getting set for the weekend or whatever, and pay an extra $1 or $2 to go to making sure that cannabis is and remains a priority for the lawmakers in Washington. So I think what you guys are doing is really great.
Well, that's exactly right. And, absolutely come back to me in January. I'm going to have some more specifics that I can share about what we're going to be doing with the funding that we receive. But, cannabis consumers do want to see the end of the war on drugs. And, I'm very supportive of what the president and specifically the Health and Human Services Department has proposed as it relates to moving cannabis down schedule. But that doesn't end formally the war on drugs. It's the first step to doing so. And it's a very, very important one. And I applaud the president and Secretary Becerra for where they have ended up on this thus far. But I think that, folks would like to see the healing process begin as a nation. Those that are cannabis consumers, they understand that the war on drugs targeted primarily people of color. And they don't want to see that anymore. And many of the arrests are still occurring. And many of the people in this country that were previously arrested, especially at the state level, which is the bulk of the arrests, they're still suffering the consequences of the arrest for minor amounts of cannabis. So we need to start that healing process as a nation. And Legalize America is going to put an enormous spotlight on that. And we hope that it's persuasive to lawmakers to really go ahead and end this and then do the things that are necessary to start healing as a nation.
Totally. Great point. Well said. I mean, the war on drugs, too, I think, again, people are tired of it. The intended and unintended consequences are just, we've all had enough of them. And we know it's failed. We know that it's been a failed attempt. War on drugs is not the attitude to sort of level at this part of our lives. It's not the way that you deal with addiction. It's not the way that you, especially with something with cannabis, which, as we've talked about before, and I, ring the bell on the show. It's just the fact that we've so normalized alcohol, and that, cannabis, even just the use of it, is still putting people in cells it's beyond absurd. And it is time for that to end. You mentioned the rescheduling, which is obviously, I applaud President Biden as well, the Health and Human Services Secretary, all the recommendations that have been coming in the last year from the White House and those administrations or the other offices of the government that are involved in this have been very encouraging. And so let's talk a little about what, as this vote count here, or as the roll call for the House continues, got 140 left yet who are still voting present, letting them know that they're there. But let's talk a little about rescheduling. What is the timeline like? What would the first steps be? How does this look in the actual real world rollout, once we get to it?
Yeah, all good questions, and I don't have solid answers for much of it, but
that's okay. Just speculative is fine.
Yeah, of course. I think, I'm thinking about, I view this as a 3-step process. The first step, of course, was October of last year when the president directed HHS and the Department of Justice to collaborate with one another on a review of where cannabis should be on schedule. HHS takes the lead on this type of directive from the president, and they have completed their business. So they have made the recommendation that, based on the science and the 8-factor analysis that they went through, that this would be moved down. The cannabis should be moved down to Schedule 3. We're in a process now where the ball has been thrown to the Drug Enforcement Agency. They're the third and final piece of this. And the DEA has basically 4 steps left. So the first is reviewing the classification of cannabis based on a 5-factor analysis. And they have to take into account obligations like international treaties, et cetera. But that's kind of what they have been doing while HHS has been going through their analysis. And that is continuing as far as I know. They are then going to formulate a proposed rule. They will then announce a public comment period. So that will be initiated. And then the administrator of the DEA will publish in the Federal Register a final order and a final rule, and then it's done. When does that actually begin? So when do they formulate a proposed rule, and when do they release it? We don't know. There's been widespread speculation that it would actually be this fall, and that would be the beginning of the process. That actually makes a lot of sense to me, that they would do some sort of an announcement this fall. Then they would go to a public comment period, which could be 60 to 90 days, perhaps longer. And then they would tally all of those results, and then they would make their final order and final rule. So I think we will see the DEA's final decision before the election. Politically, cannabis is a really, really good issue for the president to run on. It helps with the youth vote, among others. And I think that they're planning on using it for that purpose. And, they need to let both agencies go through their process, but I would expect we'll have final answer at some point next summer or early fall.
Very exciting. It is very exciting, and as you mentioned, it is a good issue for the president to run on. Certainly, most recent poll that I had seen was something like 55% of Americans want safer banking passed. It's down a little from recent years, but that's still a majority of the country. As you mentioned, the war on drugs too. I think people they want this change. They're hungry for it, and it is very much that time to make the change, and it's exciting to hear from you and others, and just really see the evidence of this groundswell continue to move when you're hearing orders from the president, the sitting actual president from the White House, directing the HHS secretary to look into rescheduling and all of this. It's very, very exciting, and I know that we're all looking forward to that. So David, one other sort of possibility as again seems seems like some other representatives are still trickling in their votes here. Just out of curiosity, what are the other options if it's not going to be Jordan and it's not McHenry? What's another, if there is? I mean, what's another possibility that could end up here? Is Jeffries at all on the table?
So I don't think so. I think that the Democrats have largely stayed out of this publicly. I'm sure that there have been some behind the scenes discussions with some of the more centrist Republicans about supporting, the Democrats bringing a block of folks over to support a consensus candidate. But I don't think that there's appetite within the Republican caucus to engage with the Democrats to allow them to choose their speaker. I don't see that happening. I think that that's way down my list in terms of what is real. And I don't know that any other consensus candidate is out there that, could gain that level of support within the caucus. There's been lots of names that have been floated around over the last few weeks. But again, I think the more realistic possibility is this expansion of authority for Mr. McHenry temporarily. And then, of course, discussions about, is it McCarthy or is there somebody else that the caucus could stomach, and they go ahead and bring he or she to the floor and they wrap this up, because they need to understand that the politics are getting worse and worse and worse for them, and I'm sure they know it better than I do. Their members are tired of this. They need to get on with their business. They want to be able to go home and talk about proactive things that they're doing for our ally Israel. They want to talk about the work that they're doing to keep the government open, and they want to talk about other initiatives that they're pressing for to try to get done before the end of the year. So I think that they're going to need to find a solution sooner rather than later. But I don't think that there's another consensus candidate that has really risen that is real at this moment.
You mentioned the Cole Memorandum that we had talked about in our last interview. Let's talk about that and how it relates to what's going on now in the House.
So this is actually this would be an administrative action, and really the mess that is the House of Representatives at the moment shouldn't have any impact on this at all. I think that there are a number of advocacy groups in the cannabis space and also a number of people within the administration, both at the DOJ, HHS, and even inside the White House, that believe that it's time to reissue the Cole Memorandum. So this was issued in 2013. It dealt with enforcement and actually directing the agency's chief law enforcement folks not to enforce in the cannabis space in state legal markets. And I think that there's feeling, including my own, that the possibility of reissuing this memo under a different name, of course, in an expanded form is something that's very possible. And two kind of major areas that I'm thinking about. One is financial services. So, is there a way to use this memo to talk about many of the things that the State Banking Act would accomplish? But let's assume the Banking Act doesn't get signed into law. I think it still will, but let's assume it doesn't. Is there a way to use this memorandum to assist access to capital, uplisting, et cetera? There's a whole host of things that they may potentially be able to put in there related to financial services. The second piece of this are items that I think could go a really long way if the president were to include them in terms of helping those that have been impacted by the war on drugs, negatively impacted by the war on drugs, and communities that have been negatively impacted. So a few that come to mind are federal housing rules, immigration rules, and also testing. So workplace testing rules. And if you are someone that is using cannabis in a legal state, for whatever reasons you choose, should you be denied federal housing as a result? Should it be cause for deportation as a result? Should you lose an opportunity, a job opportunity, as a result of your cannabis use? So there's some really good discussions that are happening with some of the key groups in the cannabis space and some of the MSOs. We're having this discussion at USCC. In fact, I wrote the slide on this just yesterday for our board meeting next week.
Nice.
And I think it'll be a really, really good discussion for us to try to figure out what we advocate for. I feel like there's an opportunity for USCC to partner with some of our progressive allies in the cannabis space to really put our political effort into getting this memo reissued and to pressing on some of these items that I referenced earlier that are really top on the agenda for the Marijuana Justice Coalition and many of the members that associate with that group.
Yeah, those are really important points, and that is a great idea. It's a crucial bit of work that needs to be done. It's again more of the really dark, bad, grim parts of fallout from the war on drugs and the continued stigma and the other negative impacts of cannabis. You just listed so many other ones that touch people's lives and really almost controls people's lives to a degree where you can't to not be able to do things like get certain jobs or even find housing, to have to deal with that, to deal with those problems and restrictions throughout a life because of something like cannabis. I think all of us would agree that that's not the way that we should be doing things here, and so a sort of rebooting or reimagining of the Cole Memorandum that David was just talking about, I think makes a lot of sense to me.
I'm looking at the floor right now, and we've got Mr. McHenry, who will gavel this closed and open up the next vote, talking to Matt Gaetz. And you'll recall, I don't know what that exchange is, but this is live happening right now. And you'll recall that Mr. Gaetz really was the leader of this group of 8 faction that ousted McCarthy. So
right.
I would be very curious to know what that conversation was about. It appeared to be one of smiles and slightly jovial. But I have no idea what exactly that was. Very interesting.
Yeah, agreed. And yeah, you're correct. That group of 8 that was sort of that, I guess, minority faction of the Republican Party that was really responsible for getting Kevin McCarthy out. Gaetz was the leader of that band. So that is kind of you do wonder what he was just kind of chatting about. Maybe it was the football games this weekend, but it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, I don't know.
As we are just awaiting, the last check-ins here before this vote does get underway, just looking at those first few letters of the alphabet, who are some early names that you're kind of keeping an eye out for, in regards to changes from yesterday and the support that Jordan can't afford to lose?
Yeah, so the clerk is going to start to call the roll. For those that didn't watch yesterday, she will begin to call the roll, and she does it alphabetically. So there's some early names in the alphabet of those group of 20s that we're going to know relatively soon whether or not Mr. Jordan has the votes or not. And some of the members to watch for right off the bat, Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska, Lori Chavez Remmer of Oregon, Anthony Desposito of New York, Mario Diaz-Balart of Florida, Jake Elzy of Texas, and there's a number of others. You get into the G's. I think there's 4 or 5, and then the list just keeps going. But by the time we get to the middle of the alphabet, actually the first third of the alphabet, we should know whether or not he is going to be elected speaker or not. So it should happen relatively quickly.
Yeah, that is cool, and we are, listener, we've got two left, one Republican, one Democrat, who are still checking in, but this should be getting underway momentarily here, and I just want to, again, thank my guest, David Culver, with the U.S. Cannabis Council and Legalize America for joining us this morning to kind of help us understand a little more deeply what it is that's going on and a lot of the nuances and sort of competing interests here. Very, very politically interesting time. It's sort of like I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you'd call this the Super Bowl, but like there's these last 6 weeks or so in politics. There has just been There's been a lot to kind of change things up, and if it entertains you, if this is kind of your content that you enjoy, there's been a lot to look at. No?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you are a political nerd like I am, a self-proclaimed political nerd, this is absolutely a Super Bowl type moment. But quite frankly, we've had these moments for years now, and they have not been good for the country. It's been absolutely fabulous political theater, but it's been terrible for the United States, and it's been really terrible for Congress. I've been disheartened watching the institution take the turn that it has taken, and this is the latest example of something that it will do no favor to the institution that is the U.S. Congress, and it's one that I personally hold very, very sacred. And I just feel like we continue to run into one issue after another that is really causing the nation to frown on our legislative branch of government. So I'm hopeful that they can get through this relatively quickly. And like I said earlier in the show, really get back to the people's business, because there are some absolutely urgent things that they need to tackle, and they need to do it this month.
Yeah, totally agreed. And it is disappointing. I know we were just kind of, making light and enjoying the theater, as you say. I mean, it is entertainment. The problem is that this entertainment is coming at a very real cost of the boring work that this body, both of these bodies, are normally charged with, and that work directly ties into the fortunes of the country, of all of us, and then people around the world too. So it is unfortunate. I mean, it's not like a movie or a video game where there's just no consequences here. Even though it may be more entertaining, the more of a train wreck this is for some people, you always have to keep in mind the very real world consequences that this train wreck is having for people, because stuff needs to be dealt with every single day. There's a lot going on all the time in the world, and the American government plays a central role in deciding what to do and kind of how to best help people and stop the bad guys and all of the stuff that it's charged with. But it is as David said, it may be entertaining, but it is disappointing. And when you sort of know the significance, you just kind of hope that they can get it together and get back to the boring old governance that they normally are supposed to be doing.
Yeah, well, it's the Congress was built to be a very, very slow moving legislative body, and they are indeed. And you need look no further than the Safe Banking Act just to see how long that bill has been in play. It's been it's been under different names, but it's been roughly 10 years that this bill has been floating around in Congress, and we've been trying to get it done. Now, cannabis is a difficult issue for a lot of members, and it's become more and more normalized in the 5+ years that I've been involved in the cannabis space. But it's still a tough one for a lot of folks, and so that makes progress on it even harder. And then you throw in the shenanigans that we're seeing in Congress and the divisiveness, and it slows the process down even more. But I do feel like this urgent need to act on Israel is going to be probably the deciding factor in terms of what happens next. And I think that calmer heads will prevail, and the caucus will make some short-term decisions, and then go back to, in parallel, trying to figure out who the next speaker is going to be. We were talking a little about how safer banking is going to impact cannabis businesses, and you had mentioned the crime element, which I've talked about a lot on the show. The fact that we make cannabis businesses cash only, it is, as you said, it makes them a ripe target for crime. When you talking about safer banking, the timeline of implementing this,
let's say we do get the new speaker and things go ideally, in terms of that bill in particular. How quickly could cannabis businesses then expect to be added to the federal banking system and start getting things, or at least applying for things like lines of credit and bank accounts, so that, they could use credit card machines or, take out small business loans instead of dealing in all cash?
Well, once it's signed into law, almost immediately. And I would say that the depository institutions, just specifically having a bank account, is going to be the easiest thing that banks are going to be willing to allow cannabis businesses to do with them. And I think we'll see that right off the bat. Access to capital is really a whole other can of worms. I think it's still going to remain relatively difficult to see that those lines of credit, if this bill were to pass tomorrow and get signed into law. There has been a number of discussions in both the House and the Senate about tweaking the language to allow to really expedite that access to capital. But we haven't seen those changes to date, and I'm not sure that we will, quite frankly. The other piece of the Banking Act that's important is just the momentum that it's going to create for cannabis reform. So it's an important piece of legislation, and it's one that obviously I spent a lot of my time advocating for. I really want to see it get done, and this is our window of opportunity to get it done. But it's going to it's going to show that a divided Congress can actually get cannabis reform done, and that's a big deal. And I think that if we're able to show this progress, that just means that there are other things that we could see in the near future. We need to rely on our champions to move this bill through the Republican Congress. Very interesting what that conversation could be.
Yeah. And there was the gavel you just heard. Speaker McHenry, interim, is at the front, the podium right now. Everyone's kind of finding their seats, and
on this
here we go.
Call, 432 members have recorded their presence. The question now recurs on the election of a speaker. If the tellers will please come forward and take their seats. Tellers. No further nominations. The reading clerk will now call the roll.
Adams. Jeffries. Adderholt. Jordan. Aguilar. Jeffries. Alford. Jordan. Allen. Jordan. Allred. Jeffries. Amadei. Jordan. Armstrong. Jordan. Arrington. Jordan. Auchincloss. Jeffries. Babin. Jordan. Bacon. McCarthy.
Mr. Bacon stays with his vote of McCarthy. That's one against Mr. Jordan. The next one we're going to watch for is Lori Chavez Dilemma.
Gotcha. Thanks for that. Yeah, so that is important. That's
Baird.
One.
Jordan. Balderson. Jordan. Ballant. Jeffries. Banks. Jordan. Barr. Jordan. Barragan. Jeffries. Bean of Florida. Jordan. Beatty. Jeffries. Bentz. Jordan. Barra. Jeffries. Bergman. Jordan. Beyer. Jeffries. Bice. Jordan. Biggs. Jordan. Bilirakis. Jordan. Bishop of Georgia, Jeffries. Bishop of North Carolina, Jordan. Blumenauer, Jeffries. Blunt Rochester, Jeffries. Bobert, Jordan. Bonamici, Jeffries. Bost, Jordan. Bowman, Jeffries. Boyle of Pennsylvania, Jeffries. Burkeen, Jordan. Brown, Jeffries. Brownlee, Jeffries. Buchanan, Donalds. Buck, Emmer.
Mr. Buck also votes against Mr. Jordan and for Mr. Emmer. It's 2.
Bouchon, Jordan. Basinski, Jeffries. Burchett, Jordan. Burgess, Jordan. Burleson, Jordan. Bush, Jeffries. Calvert, Jordan. Kamek, Jordan. Caraveo, Jeffries. Carbajal, Jeffries. Cardenas, Jeffries. Carey, Jordan. Carl, Jordan. Carson, Jeffries. Carter of Georgia, Jordan. Carter of Louisiana, Jeffries. Carter of Texas, Jordan. Cartwright, Jeffries. Kassar, Jeffries. Case, Jeffries. Caston, Jeffries. Castor of Florida, Jeffries. Castro of Texas, Jeffries. Chavez de Reamer, McCarthy.
There's another one. She's holding her ground.
So is that 3?
3.
Sherfilis McCormick, Jeffries. Chu, Jeffries. Cisco Monty, Jordan. Clark of Massachusetts, Jeffries. Clark of New York, Jeffries. Cleaver, Jeffries. Klein, Jordan. Cloud, Jordan. Clyburn, Jeffries. Clyde, Jordan. Cohen, Jeffries. Cole, Jordan. Collins. Jordan. Comer. Jordan. Connolly. Jeffries. Correa. Jeffries. Costa. Jeffries. Courtney. Jeffries. Craig. Jeffries. Crane. Jordan. Crawford. Jordan. Crenshaw. Jordan. Crockett. Jeffries. Crow. Jeffries. Cuellar. Jeffries. Curtis. Jordan. Davids of Kansas. Jeffries. Davidson. Jordan. Davis of Illinois. Jeffries. Davis of North Carolina. Jeffries. Dean of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. DeGette. Jeffries. Dela Cruz. Jordan. DeLauro. Jeffries. Del Bene. Jeffries. DeLuzio. Jeffries. DeSaulnier. Jeffries. Desjardins. Jordan. D'Esposito. Zeldin.
There's another one.
So that is 4 by my count, right, David?
That should put us, yep, there should be one more to go.
Diaz-Balart. Scalise.
There's another one. There's 5.
So that's 5. So that should pretty much settle it. Is that right?
That should do it, and we now need to pay attention to the remainder and see who else is going
Dingle.
to vote against,
Jeffries.
and
Doggett.
whether or not that number of 20 increases
Jeffries.
or decreases. And I think
Donalds.
I still seeing it.
Jordan.
I see it increasing.
Gotcha.
Duarte.
All right, yeah, let's keep listening.
Jordan. Duncan. Jordan. Dunn of Florida. Jordan. Edwards. Jordan. Elsie. Mike Garcia.
Mr. Elsie also sticks with Mike Garcia. That's another one. So far, there hasn't been anyone that's changed their votes.
Okay.
Emmer. Jordan. Escobar. Jeffries. Eshu. Jeffries. Espaillat. Jeffries. Estes. Jordan. Evans. Jeffries. Azell. Jordan. Fallon. Jordan. Finstra. Jordan. Ferguson. Scalise.
There's another one, Mr. Ferguson. That's new.
Oh, so that is a change.
Yep.
Finstad. Jordan. Fishbach. Jordan. Fitzgerald. Jordan. Fitzpatrick. Jordan. Fleischman. Jordan. Fletcher. Jeffries. Flood. Jordan. Foster. Jeffries. Fushi. Jeffries. Fox. Jordan. Lois Frankel. Jeffries. Scott Franklin. Jordan. Frost. Jeffries. Fry. Jordan. Fulcher. Jordan. Gates. Jordan. Gallagher. Jordan. Gallego. Jeffries. Garamendi. Jeffries. Garbarino. Zeldin.
Also sticking with his vote for Zeldin.
Mike Garcia. Jordan. Robert Garcia. Jeffries. Garcia of Illinois. Jeffries. Garcia of Texas. Jeffries. Jimenez. McCarthy.
There's another one, Mr. Jimenez, sticking with his vote for McCarthy.
Golden of Maine. Jeffries. Goldman of New York. Jeffries. Gomez. Jeffries. Tony Gonzalez. Scalise.
Also sticking with his vote for Scalise.
Vicente Gonzalez. Jeffries. Good of Virginia. Jordan. Gooden of Texas. Jordan. Gosar. Jordan. Gottheimer. Jeffries. Granger. Scalise. Graves of Louisiana. Jordan. Graves of Missouri. Jordan. Green of Tennessee. Jordan. Green of Texas. Jeffries. Green of Georgia. Jordan. Griffith. Jordan. Grijalva. Jeffries. Grothman. Grothman. Jordan. Guest. Jordan. Guthrie. Jordan. Hageman. Jordan. Harder of California. Jeffries. Harris. Jordan. Harshbarger. Jordan. Hayes. Jeffries. Hearn. Jordan. Higgins of Louisiana. Jordan. Higgins of New York. Jeffries. Hill. Jordan. Himes. Jeffries. Henson. Jordan. Horsford. Jeffries. Houchin. Jordan. Houlihan. Jeffries. Hoyer. Jeffries. Hoyle of Oregon. Jeffries. Hudson. Jordan. Huffman. Jeffries. Huizinga. Jordan. Hunt. Jordan. Isa. Jordan. Ivy. Jeffries. Jackson of Illinois. Jeffries. Jackson of North Carolina. Jeffries. Jackson of Texas. Jordan. Jackson Lee. Jeffries. Jacobs. Jeffries. James. Miller Meeks. Candace Miller of Michigan.
I have us at 12 now.
House will come to order. The clerk will continue.
Jayapal. Jeffries. Jeffries. Jeffries.
They like that one.
Johnson of Georgia. Jeffries. Johnson of Louisiana. Jordan. Johnson of Ohio. Jordan. Johnson of South Dakota. Jordan. 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 Joyce of Ohio. Jordan. Joyce of Pennsylvania. Jordan. Camlogger Dove. Jeffries. Captor. Jeffries. Kane of New Jersey. Jordan. Keating. Jeffries. Kelly of Illinois. Jeffries. Kelly of Mississippi. Jordan. Kelly of Pennsylvania.
Former Speaker of the House, the Honorable John Boehner.
Boehner.
That was a change of his vote. He voted for Scalise last time, Boehner this time. Lots of applause there.
Kana.
An authoritative gavel from McHenry there.
Kana.
I have us at
Jeffries.
14. 14 at the
Higgins of
moment.
Virginia.
Got it, compared with the 20 that we're
McCarthy.
watching. All right.
Kildee. Jeffries. Kiley. Jordan. Kilmer. Jeffries. Kim of California. Jordan. Kim of New Jersey. Jeffries. Krishnamurthy. Jeffries. Custer, Jeffries, Kustoff, Jordan, LaHood, Jordan, LaLota, Zeldin, LaMalfa, Jordan, Lamborn,
That's a change.
Oh, okay.
Lamborn, Jordan, Landsman, Jeffries, Langworthy, Jordan, Larson of Washington, Jeffries, Larson of Connecticut, Jeffries, Latta, Jordan, LaTurner, Jordan, Lawler,
Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
McCarthy,
Waller sticks with his vote from yesterday.
Lee of California, Jeffries, Lee of Florida, Jordan, Lee of Nevada, Jeffries, Lee of Pennsylvania, Jeffries, Ledger Fernandez, Jeffries, Lesko, Jordan, Letlow, Jordan, Levin, Jeffries, Liu, Jeffries, Lofgren, Jeffries, Loudermilk, Jordan, Lucas, Jordan, Luetkemeyer, Jordan, Luna, Jordan,
I have us at
Luttrell,
17, and
Jordan,
I see another
Lynch,
4 that should be against Jordan,
Jeffries,
putting us over that 20 number,
Mace,
and there may be some additional.
Jordan,
Gotcha. Okay. So it seems like we are on track for more
Jeffries,
dissenters then.
Maliotakis,
I think it's going to be at least 20
Jordan,
and potentially more.
Mann, Jordan, Manning, Jeffries, Massey, Jordan, Mast, Jordan, Matsui, Jeffries, McBath, Jeffries, McCarthy, Jordan, McCall, Jordan, McLean, Jordan, McClellan, Jeffries, McClintock, Jordan, McCollum, Jeffries, McCormick, Jordan, McGarvey, Jeffries, McGovern, Jeffries, McHenry, Jordan, Meeks, Jeffries, Menendez, Jeffries, Ming, Jeffries, Muser, Jordan, Mfume, Jeffries, Miller of Illinois, Jordan, Miller of Ohio, Jordan, Miller of West Virginia, Jordan, Miller Meeks, Granger. Mills. Jordan. Molinaro. Jordan. Molinar. Jordan. Mooney. Jordan. Moore of Alabama. Jordan. Moore of Utah. Jordan. Moore of Wisconsin. Jeffries. Moran. Jordan. Morelli.
Mr. Jeffries.
Jeffries. Moskowitz. Jeffries. Moulton. Jeffries. Mervan.
Mr. Jeffries.
Jeffries. Mullen. Jeffries. Murphy. Jordan. Nadler. Jeffries. Napolitano. Jeffries. Neal. Jeffries. Nagoose. Jeffries. Nels. Jordan. Newhouse. Jordan. Nickel. Jeffries. Norcross. Jeffries. Norman. Jordan. Nunn of Iowa. Jordan. Obernolte. Jordan. Ocasio-Cortez. Jeffries. Ogles. Jordan. Omar. Jeffries. Owens. Jordan. Pallone. Jeffries. Palmer. Jordan. Panetta. Jeffries. Pappas. Jeffries. Pasquarel. Jeffries. Payne. Payne. Pelosi. Jeffries. Peltola. Jeffries. Pence. Jordan. Perez. Perez. Jeffries. Perry. Jordan. Peters. Jeffries. Pedersen. Jeffries. Pfluger. Jordan. Phillips. Jeffries. Pingree. Jeffries. Pocan. Jeffries. Porter. Jeffries. Posey. Jordan. Presley. Jeffries. Quigley. Jeffries. Ramirez. Jeffries. Raskin. Jeffries. Reschenthaler. Jordan. Rogers of Washington. Jordan. Rogers of Alabama. Jordan. Rogers of Kentucky, Jordan. Rose, Jordan. Rosendale, Jordan. Ross, Jeffries. Rouser, Jordan. Roy, Jordan. Ruiz, Jeffries. Rupersberger, Jeffries. Rutherford, Scalise.
Rutherford sticks with his vote.
Ryan, Jeffries. Salazar, Jordan. Salinas, Jeffries. Sanchez, Jeffries. Santos,
People of Queens and Long Island, Jim Jordan.
Jordan. Sarbanes, Jeffries. Scalise,
Jim Jordan.
Jordan. Scanlon, Jeffries. Schakowsky, Jeffries. Schiff, Jeffries. Schneider, Jeffries. Skolton, Jeffries. Schreier, Jeffries. Schweikert, Jordan. Austin Scott, Jordan. David Scott, Jeffries. Scott of Virginia, Jeffries. Self, Jordan. Sessions, Jordan. Sewell, Jeffries. Sherman, Jeffries. Sherrill, Jeffries. Simpson, Scalise. Slotkin, Jeffries.
Simpson also keeps
Smith
his vote.
of Missouri, Jordan. Smith of Nebraska, Jordan. Smith of New Jersey, Jordan. Smith of Washington, Jeffries. Smucker, Jordan. Sorensen, Jeffries. Soto, Jeffries. Spanberger, Jeffries. Sparts, Stansberry, Jeffries. Stanton, Jeffries. Stauber, Westerman.
This is at 20. It's probably going to end up at 21-22. Sparks missed the vote, and Womack is left.
Steele, Jordan. Stefanik, Jordan. Style, Jordan. Stubbe, Jordan. Stevens, Jeffries. Strickland, Jeffries. Strong, Jordan. Swalwell, Jeffries. Sykes, Jeffries. Takano, Jeffries. Tenney. Jordan. Tanadar. Jeffries. Thompson of California. Jeffries. Thompson of Mississippi. Jeffries. Thompson of Pennsylvania. Jordan. Tiffany. Jordan. Timmons. Jordan. Titus. Jeffries. Talib. Talib. Takuda. Jeffries. Tonko. Jeffries. Torres of California. Jeffries. Torres of New York. Jeffries. Trahan. Jeffries. Trone. Trone. Turner. Jordan. Underwood. Jeffries. Valadeo. Jordan. Van Drew.
The Honorable Jim Jordan.
Jordan. Van Dyne. Jordan. Van Orden.
Jim Jordan.
Jordan. Vargas. Jeffries. Vasquez. Jeffries. Vesey. Jeffries. Velasquez. Jeffries. Wagner. Jordan. Wahlberg. Jordan. Waltz. Jordan. Wasserman Schultz. Jeffries. Waters. Jeffries. Watson Coleman. Jeffries. Weber of Texas. Jordan. Webster of Florida. Jordan. Winstrup. Jordan. Westerman. Jordan. Wexton. Jeffries. Wild. Jeffries. Williams of Georgia. Jeffries. Williams of New York. Jordan. Williams of Texas. Jordan. Wilson of Florida. Jeffries. Wilson of South Carolina. Jordan. Whitman. Jordan. Womack. Scalise.
Womack also keeps his vote for Scalise. That should put us at 22.
Yackham. Jordan. Zinke.
Jim Jordan of Ohio.
Jordan.
And so now it seems like they tally it up. Everyone has had their say. David, as you mentioned, you've been, tallying as we were going here, and really appreciate you, just sticking around and taking us through this and going name by name, and just kind of, highlighting which ones are worth paying attention to, why it matters. And it seems like, you had predicted that there would be more than the 20 votes heading into today. And it seems like we ended up with 22.
That's right. 22 is the number that I've got. They'll formally announce it here on the floor shortly. But we are off to the next vote. And who will be that individual that they vote for? We don't know if Mr. Jordan will continue his efforts to become Speaker. If he thinks that there's a willingness on the third ballot to get other individuals to side with him, my gut is that he's going to receive a great deal of pressure to go ahead and pull himself out of the race. And I also think that, per my comments about Mr. McHenry earlier, I think that there's a willingness amongst the Democrats to work with Mr. McHenry.
And now call the names of the members who did not answer first call of the roll.
They're going to call a couple that
Jeffries.
That missed during the initial.
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha. I noticed a few of those as they went.
Sparts. Jordan.
So Sparts has voted for Jordan, so that's a change.
Okay.
She previously had voted against. So
Tlaib. Jeffries. Trone. Jeffries.
So now that seems like they got to the 221, and you're saying with that change there of the initial members who voted and the first pass through who had missed their chance to vote for whatever reason, they, after going through them, the stragglers, let's say, one of them changed their vote from yesterday, so did that take us down to 21?
No, that should actually keep us at 22. So we had two members that changed their vote from yesterday to support Mr. Jordan.
Okay.
And we had two members that changed their vote in support of to against, or for other members. So we are going to end up at 22. And again, the question is going to be whether Mr. Jordan fights on or whether he decides to pull out of the race. I think that my gut says that he will get a great deal of pressure to pull out of the race. I think that's what he ultimately will do. And I think that there is some willingness amongst the Democrats to work with Mr. McHenry to find a pathway forward. The House has been has been without a speaker now for over 14 days. And this has got to get resolved. The business of the country is critical right now, and they have got to get back to work. So,
right. I totally agree with you. And as you said, with that wash, take it two changed to support, two change against. So that basically leaves us with the 22, which is two more against Jordan than the 20 from yesterday. I also would have to think that, going in the other direction than Jordan and any of his supporters would want it to go in terms of the number of people voting yes for him. You'd have to think that there would be significant pressure not to waste any more time with a third vote for Jordan. And let's move on to somebody who can actually fill the seat, McHenry, who's already in it, or someone who can actually just get the votes that's needed so that we can move beyond this and, as you say, get back to the people's business, because there's a lot more important stuff to deal with.
That's exactly right. And we will know the next steps here soon enough. But it's been fun sitting here and watching the vote with you. I certainly hope that your listeners have enjoyed watching this historic moment, because this is going to have a very big impact on cannabis reform. Whoever the speaker ends up being, there could be a pretty sizable shift of deck chairs in the House, and we'll have to address that. But in the meantime, for those of you here in Washington, please get up to the Hill and please help build that list of co-sponsors on the Safe Banking Act in the House. And let's all continue to do our good works to get this out of the Senate as well.
Absolutely. David Culver, Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at the U.S. Cannabis Council and doing such great work with Legalize America. Thank you so much for jumping in today and not only just taking us through the great work that you guys are doing and helping us kind of suss out the nuances of both sides of all these topics in Washington, and especially for sticking around so long and going through the names as we did, sit through this historic moment of a second attempted election of Jim Jordan to the Speaker's position. And I can't thank you enough for just taking all the time today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Good Son.